Alright, it is 7 a.m. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Mobility. Coach Matt here, ready to get you started with your day, loosen up some limbs and some joints. We're going to start in a seated position. We're going to go for our fire log or our double pigeon stretch. So basically taking one foot, popping that out on top of the other. If this is too much for you, you can slide that leg down as needed. But the higher we can get that up there, a little bit deeper into that stretch we can get. And we're just going to take a nice little lean forward. Game plan for today, this first block is going to be some longer holds. So we're just going to get nice and comfortable. I know sometimes here on Morning Mobility, we like to kind of get a lot of different stretches in. But we're going to work to kind of really sit and hold some and get a better feel for that loosening or that relaxation feeling, I suppose. So kind of melting that tension away. We talk about a lot about kind of sinking deeper into that stretch. So we're going to hold here about 2 minutes. So I want you to really focus on those things that we just talked about, kind of melting into that stretch and letting the tension go. So whatever leg is on top, this hip is what we're working on. Kind of that hip, that glute. So you want to kind of letting that chest almost fall down to the ground. You should feel that starting to loosen up. Just trying to be very in tune with that body. Kind of identify where you're holding tension in those hips, maybe in that low back, of those glutes, and just work to let that go. So sometimes we underestimate those longer holds. We're usually in that kind of 20 to 30 second range. But if we get a good longer hold, it's a lot different of a stimulus to release that stretch. We'll go ahead and ease our way up out of that. Should feel a lot better. We'll go ahead to the other side, same thing. And we'll just kind of ease over. So I can already feel right here is about where the limit of that stretch is to start. So as this kind of 2 minutes elapses, we're just going to work to let ourselves fall down a little bit deeper into that stretch. I don't know if some of you are into meditation, but this is kind of a good way just to really focus on being present. Try not to think about much else, but rather making that connection to our muscles, to those joints. Just kind of checking in with our body. We slowly melt. Now we can get all the way down to those forearms. So we're a lot looser. So I like to take about 10-15 minutes after a good strength session, kind of do the same thing, just hold a couple longer stretches. Go ahead and relax up out of that, just depending on what you worked on that day. So now we're going to go to kind of this half straddle position. We're going to kind of sit back on one heel. You can tuck those toes under or not, whichever way is more comfortable. work to extend that leg, and we're going to try and work on that hamstring on that back of the heel there. Have to get a little bit longer. So you kind of want to pull that chest down into that front knee. All right, you don't want to get out here. It's going to be a little bit more of that hip. So we're focused on that hamstring. So we're going to keep this focus as tight and straight line as we can. Same deal, we're going to hold this for a little bit. And kind of work to stretch out those glutes there, that hip before. Now we're going to focus on those hamstrings. So the more straight we can get that leg, the more benefit, the deeper into that hamstring we'll get. So think about this kind of like a forward fold if you're standing up and kind of hinging over to touch your toes, but you're doing this kind of one-legged, and you have the help of this knee down for a little, so we can focus on the one hamstring. You have the stability of that single leg. And sometimes that pose may not look exactly like the way that I'm presenting it, depending on where your tightness is. You may have to move and reorient yourself just a little bit, which is totally fine. I want you to find somewhere that you're getting the most out of the stretch, right? Let's maximize our time here while we're dedicated to mobilizing. For me, the hamstrings get the least amount of love, so I like to really stretch them out when I can. They're always the first thing that gets sore after a heavy leg workout. Alright, we're going to ease our way out of that, move into that other leg. So same situations, take a minute, kind of reorient yourself. You know, sometimes you want to go right into that same position that we were just in on the other leg, but it's a little bit too deep to start out with. I'm going to start off a little bit more shallow. Kind of move deeper into it as we get there. So I do have both arms down on the ground, kind of on both sides of that leg, just to make sure, again, that chest kind of stays square, so we're not off to the side, and we're able to get the most depth out of that hamstring stretch. So as I'm lowering that chest to the knee, I'm also working to extend that knee if we can. We don't necessarily want to lock out, but as extended as we can get it, it's just going to be that much more beneficial. So a couple different ways to alter the control there. And trying to release that tension that you may be holding or pulling with those glutes. And for about another 20-30 seconds here. Just really surrender to that stretch. Trying to melt it away. And if we're kind of getting to the point where we're not really feeling that stretch anymore, try to increase the depth, either lowering that chest or extending the knee. Trying to get a relatively consistent stimulus, not necessarily holding the same position, but the the effort that goes into the stretch or the response that you're getting from that stretch, trying to keep that consistent. So you kind of have to gradually deepen that stretch as you go. All right. We're just going to shift that weight forward into a nice little runner's lunge. So getting into our hips a little bit more into that kind of lateral position. we're going to kind of just alternate back and forth. We're going to kind of add some motion into this. So we're going to go back into kind of that half straddle, pushing that hip back, then pushing that knee forward, lifting that other knee up off the ground. We're just going to kind of gently go back and forth between these two. Now really open up this one side. If you need to hold either of those two positions for a little bit longer than I am now, please feel free to do so. We like to mix in with those longer holds some more of that active mobility, kind of transitioning from position to position. Looking to check out if there's any kind of hiccups in that motion, if our hips are limiting us from moving one to the other. It's a good sign that we may need to put a little bit more focus into something, whether it be the hamstring, hips, even the quad of the opposing leg. Let's go one more time, back and forth. And we'll switch legs, so we'll do that same thing kind of on the other side. We'll get back into kind of that hamstring stretch, and we'll just walk that forward into our runner's lunge. So this side typically stays a little bit looser for me. So we get into that runner's lunge. I want you to really focus on kind of pushing that knee forward. So we get some secret ankle work in there as well. As you push that knee forward, keep that heel down to the ground. And just looking to reach the limits of those two positions, really extending your way through that runner's lunge and extending that knee here through that hamstring stretch. We'll go one more time back and forth from the hamstring to the runners. Good. We're going to come up into our kneeling position. And we're just going to open up that knee about 45 degrees out to the side. And we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to push that knee forward and kind of ease that hip into it. So kind of just a little bit different direction than that runner's lunge. So same thing, we're just going to kind of slowly press, open up those hips, and return to center. I want you to focus on your ankle mobility again here, keeping that heel down towards that ground. And we're kind of opening up those hips as we go. So I'm getting a slight rotation in that chest, going almost 45 degrees the opposing way. So two more here. And again, kind of just easing your way into it, testing that range of motion through that hip, through that knee. We'll switch sides. Same thing, half kneeling position, opening up that 45 degrees and easing into that. Certainly a little bit tighter on that side. It feels like I'd loosen up relatively quickly. It's like those first two were real tough, and now it's a lot easier. So it's always rewarding sometimes when we hold those long stretches. You're not really realizing when you don't really get like a click. Oh, I'm not tight anymore. I'm loose. You kind of really sink into that stretch, but for whatever reason, this one it felt like it just kind of turned off. All right, we'll go one more here. All right, we're going to drop back down to the ground. We're going to do a little bit of upper body mobility work. So laying straight on the ground, we're going to reach those hands up to the sky. And we're going to take those palms towards us. We're going to work to pull those shoulder blades down into the ground. And we're going to open up those arms, so we're putting the back of the hands to the ground. Squeezing those shoulder blades nice and tight. We're going to bend at the elbows, so we're kind of like a field goal position. Still squeezing those shoulder blades together. We're going to slide those hands up overhead, still keeping those shoulder blades together best you can. This one's going to be a little bit difficult trying to get those forearms, wrists, hands all on the ground at the same time. Then we're just going to pull that back and extend those elbows once more and bring those arms back together. We're going to untense those shoulder blades, kind of loosen those up. All right, we're going to do that a couple more times. I'm going to squeeze those shoulder blades together. Open those arms out wide, pushing those wrists to the ground. Bend those elbows to that field goal. Check in real quick here. Make sure those abs are kind of pulled tight. You're pushing that low back into the ground as well. Then you're going to slide those arms up overhead while maintaining as much of that arm in contact with the ground as possible. You may not get very extended, which is totally fine, just to test where that upper body mobility is. We're going to pull that back down, keep those shoulder blades tight, extend those elbows, and pull those arms up together. Release those shoulder blades. Do that 2 more times. Shoulder blades down and back, open wide. Field goal arms, slide it up. And pull them back down. Extend those elbows, bring them back up, and release those shoulder blades. All right, one last time. Squeeze them together, open wide, bend at the elbows, and slide those arms up. Be in control, right? Don't just push it. Nice, slow control up. Just keep those shoulder blades together, and pull those arms back down. And extend those elbows, bring those arms back up. And release those shoulder blades. All right. So hopefully that range of motion increased as we went through there. We're going to hop back up to our feet. Not back up, but for the first time. So, I usually like to end the class in a standing position, so we kind of transition from this class into our day. So what we're going to do is going to get a nice hinge. All right, those hamstrings should be feeling pretty good. We're going to walk those hands down. We're going to grab those toes. We're going to sit those hips down into a good deep squat position, our bootstrap squat. We're going to send those hips back up. And then we're going to walk those hands out to a nice plank position. Establish that plank. I'm going to push those hips up. Nice little down dog. A little bit more hamstring calf love here. Walk those hands back in. Keep it in that forward fold. Grab those toes, sit those hips down. We're just going to push through these few positions here for the last minute or so. You're going to bring those hips back up. Again, trying to extend those knees as much as we can without locking them out. We're going to walk those hands out to plank. As you walk, try to keep those heels down. Make sure we really establish that plank position, pushing down into the ground, squeeze those abs. Bring those hips back up. Pushing that chest towards our toes. And walk those hands back. Grabbing those toes, sinking those hips down. I'll do about 2 more here. As we're down here, thinking about kind of really opening that chest. Sometimes we take those elbows to the inside of those knees and push those knees out as well. Sending those hips up. Walking those hands out to plank. And push those heels down. Good length here. Hinging up into that pike or that down dog. Walking it back. Sitting down, we'll go one more time through. Ooh. Send those hips up. We'll walk that out into plank. Pushing those hips up. Walking it back. And we'll roll it on up nice and easy. And that'll do it. Thanks so much for joining me this morning for morning mobility. I'm Coach Matt. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you tomorrow.